Recording now. All right, we are recording. So, so on Tuesday, we started just kind of quickly getting into InDesign, start to kind of show you guys what InDesign is all about, why you might be needing to use it. We kind of discussed that a little bit. So today we're just going to kind of get into it a little bit more, because it can be a complicated program in the sense that it does a lot. So because it does a lot, it's we'll say it's robust. So I just want to kind of start to go through some of the parts of it, so you'll be able to kind of work with it a little bit more. And if you're already working with it, probably, hopefully you can work with it a little bit easier as we go here. Oh, you can follow. Okay. All right. So, like I said, we had last class, we talked about a box for pictures. Now there's two shapes. There's the rectangle frame and there's the rectangle tool. I can tell you there really is no difference. So the frame will give you kind of the X, and anybody who's worked with InDesign for a while as a designer, they recognize this. We understand this X means something's going to go in there. Okay, so if you come upon a file and somebody was working on it and there's an X, that's probably a plan for them to put an image in that area. Now, if you do a shape, it's just without the X. Does that make sense? Is there any difference? No, because I can take this shape and give it a color. And I'm just going to give that a color there. I'll give it another color because we're using that color. Likewise, I can give a color to this shape. Okay, so there really is no difference between them. Why are they? I can't really tell you why. I'm sure there's something in there, but I'm not sure, or I'm not smart enough to have figured it out yet. But you'll see there's rectangle, ellipse, poly, and if you look over here, there's rectangle, ellipse, poly. So they're the same. Okay, and these really become kind of the building blocks that we'll end up using for adding images. And again, it can be photos, it could be Illustrator files. If it's a photo, we typically bring it in as a JPEG or a TIFF, a TIF. But you can also bring in PSD files. You can also bring in Illustrator files. You can export your Illustrator files as a PNG and bring it in. You can save that Illustrator file as a JPEG. It really, or an EPS. So you really have a lot of options as to how you can bring in and what format of images you can bring in. So that's kind of nice about InDesign, is you don't need to have it just in one particular file format. Okay, it's very, very flexible with that. So either way you're comfortable, make a box. Again, as you see, these have the X in them still. That just is kind of like a visual that something will go in. If you were to print this right now, that line does not show up. That X does not show up. It's just kind of a quick guide. So it will print the same as these boxes over here, where we just have a color into it. Okay, so it really makes no difference as to how you're putting that in. Now, I want to talk about a tool called the Gap tool as a way to kind of help you to lay this out. Now, how do people typically lay out? Let me just quickly Google a quick image here. Okay, so this is an example of a layout design. This, again, I just Googled it. Oftentimes as designers will do this, we'll get some blank paper and just kind of do some doodles with it, just to kind of give us our ideas of where we want things to go. And as you can see here, we're doing things like a title, and these little gray lines are means it would be text. And then we have the boxes here for images. Down here, we have other examples. And again, you can find these kind of examples online. Now, it doesn't need to be done in something like the computer. You can just sketch these out on a piece of paper with your paper and pencil type of thing. So there really is no need to, spend a lot of time working this, but it's just to kind of give you a feel as to where you want things to go. Okay, so here's an example here of a layout someone did for a fashion magazine. And you can see the images overlapping, and they've got little ideas of stories and headlines, and they're calling a pull quote in here. So again, we're going to get into this kind of as we start our layouts. But it's a good idea to just kind of sketch out, look at other references, and that's going to be important as we go, is again to find your visual references, so you're not working from scratch. Okay, as I said, all design is kind of based upon other design. We're going to add our own little innovations and make it our own, but we're not typically bringing up these things out of the blue. It's like anything else, you need to get inspiration, and with that inspiration, you're going to be able to come up with some really cool and creative designs. And there's a lot of stuff out there. Okay, there are complete books on this stuff. You could spend, your life looking on the internet for this stuff. There are tutorials. There are downloads that we can do through InDesign. So start to utilize your resources here. And as you start to do this, you're going to start to kind of get a feel of how you want things to go. And here we go with a page, and I'm thinking, we want to add some pictures in here, and we want to kind of figure those out. And I want to show you this tool called the Gap tool that will allow you to do that. So I have these blank, there's no images in them. Whether they have an image or not, this tool still works. So it doesn't need to be completed. You can kind of lay it out first before you ever insert or place an image in it. So the gap tool, it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 4 down, and it says gap. And as you roll over, you're going to see that tool up here. Let me zoom in so you can start to see it a little bit better. Again, if anybody has a question, just stop or give it a little shout out or type in the chat for that. So in a very, very basic format, the gap tool is designed to help you move this area. So this is called the gap, the space between, in this case, two picture boxes. You can also do this between a picture and a text box. So what it does is, one, if I just move over and click with my mouse and move it right to left, you can see that gap moves. Okay, so what it's doing is actually moving the gap between the two boxes. In this case, one box gets bigger, one gets smaller. So again, as you're starting to work, you can just draw shapes in and then come back in and go, well, that's too symmetrical, it's kind of boring. Let me offset a little bit. And you can just kind of do something like that where you just kind of offset that gap. Okay, so just the gap tool when you put it between shapes. And again, it works for everything. So here, it's talking about the gap between the box and the gutter here. This line coming down is the page between where the page spreads, where the page folds. Okay, so that's the gutter. The term is called a gutter. So it makes that gap between that. Now you can see you can go overlap and you can get into other pages, but when you pull the gap tool up, it's typically based upon things within that. Oh, no problem coming late. Mark it down here. So the gap tool also works from the top, from the margins. So you can move things down or up. Likewise, it works on the outside margins. Okay. And it actually works between space. So here we have a very large gap. So even here, you can see it's moving. So it's not only moving the top two boxes, it's moving this box below because of that gap tool, and it's resizing as we go. Okay, so the gap tool is a quick way that you can kind of stretch out or give yourself additional space between. Now, if you hold the command down on a Mac to do this, it spreads it out or deletes it. You can actually bring it down to nothing. Okay, so if you have a gap and you want to get rid of it, you can just kind of hold the command and drag it in. Now, a reason this is good is because it does it kind of everything kind of symmetrical. And if you had a picture in there, it's doing them both together, so you can kind of get a pretty good visual as to how it's going to work. Okay, especially if you have auto adjustments on your image. Okay, so let me real quick, I'm going to place an image into that. So I selected that box. I'm going to put a picture in, Command D. And let me just kind of find a picture. And I'm going to get another picture over here. Command D. Rub it into there. Okay. Now again, I'm going to resize or move this picture around so we get a little bit better focus on it. So then when I come back, and actually let me select on sizing, fill frame. I'm just going to put auto fit. And then on this one, all those fit. So again, as I resize, it should make the adjustments to that based on the gap. Okay, so here we can see that's enlarging. Okay, likewise, I'm holding Command and I'm moving things in and out, and it's kind of making adjustments as we go. All right, so it works whether the box is, in this case, solid or with an image. So again, that's kind of where one of those important things where you turn on auto fit. It will kind of help you as you go along. Okay, it may not be perfect, and if you need to come back, you can go back and make that individual adjustment on that picture. But it's a really cool way of kind of working it. So again, the gap tool, hold the Command, and you could just move your mouse right or left to enlarge or move that gap around. If I just go over, it goes right and left. If I hold the Option, it moves both together. So I'm just holding the Option now. It's not moving the gap, okay, in this case, but it's taking both those pictures and kind of moving them right and left, not up and down, but right and left. Okay, so it might be something you want to do. Okay. So right, left over the gap, just kind of moves the gap, right, left, hold Command. It will increase or decrease the gap. And then Option will move it right and left. Okay. Now, again, the computer is pretty smart. So it's not moving when I change this gap here, it's not affecting this. Again, I can move it up and down here, okay, but it's not affecting this. If I take this other box and kind of put it in, it should start to mind the gap here on this one. Let me just see if it's going to do that. Let me get this one set up a little bit closer. So if it pulls it in and we got the guides going on, there we go. This should work the gap. Between them. Maybe it's not because the picture's in there now. But typically it will go up and down too. So let me move over here and try this one. Put another one over here. And I'm going to move the gap. Okay, so here we go. I moved the gap tool over. I'm not holding any keys down. As I go in and out, it's moving the box below also. So even though we haven't linked them or we have not held the Shift key and selected them together, when I move this gap, it's saying because they're on the same guides that you must want to move that also. Likewise here, if you see I move that gap over left and right, that bottom image or bottom box will move along with it. And likewise, if I move the, hold the Command down as I move, it does it. You can see there's an overlap. It does it because there's no image in there. If there was an image in the box, it will bring it to a tight where one kisses the other, but will not overlap the pictures. Okay, so The gap tool is a pretty useful tool. Again, we put in some guides just to kind of start us off here on this document, but it's not something we're stuck with. And the gap tool allows to kind of keep things arranged, and enlarge or shrink that gap down between things. You know, because we're working and this looks great here, but at some point you're going to go, hey, I need to make a change. I want to increase that gap or not. And that's the way of doing it. So pulling the gap tool here, as I do that, you can see it's literally moving all of the column, the picture, the text, etc. Everything in that column is moving right and left. And likewise, if I come over here, it's going to move that. Okay, and you can see it's even affecting that little title box that we kind of drew in. Okay, so it's a really, really powerful tool. It's one that kind of, I think, gets ignored and overlooked, but it's a really good way of kind of lining things up. And again, once you kind of get things lined up, you don't want to have to go back and click them all. This way it kind of does it together. Okay, so work with the gap tool and you'll find it works out quite well. Okay. Any questions on that, on the gap tool?
Wish I'd known about it.
Oh, well, that's why we're here.
That's why we're here.
Now, I've been drawing squares, but no, you can do, you know, the ellipse tool. You can draw ellipses, and this is kind of a star shape. That's a polygon, I'm sorry. Let me click that here so you can see it. And then we have the properties here. I'm going to give it a little stroke weight so you can kind of see it there on that. You can also do ellipses. Okay, and if you hold the shift key, just like you would in Illustrator, it gives you a circle. Okay, so if you have a circle, and you're going to go, why? Well, you might want to put a photo in that circle, right? So you can do that. We have a circle here. I'm going to go Command D or place, and I'm just going to find a picture. I'm going to open, and now we put that picture into there. Now, again, you can see the picture is much, much larger by these little yellow outlines. That is the size of the picture as opposed to the frame that it's been placed in. Okay, so one click with the direct tool gives you the frame. Okay, and when it's blue, that means you can move it around and the picture will move with you. Okay, if I double click on the picture, it gives me the image so you can see how big it is. So at this point, I could scale just the image down, and I'm going to hold the shift as I scale proportionally. Okay, and if I move over, I can simply move it. Okay, and you can see I'm in there with the picture. So that yellow handle is the picture itself. The blue is the frame of the frame, okay, that the picture can go in. So I'm holding shift as I scale to make it keep proportional. Okay, now I can come over here. I'm going to click it again, and I'm going to go to my fitting, right? And again, I like to keep the auto on. In this case, I just hit fill, and it's going to fit the picture to fit within there. If I do this, it shrinks it down, so basically it's so you can see the full picture. Okay, but if I want to fill this whole circle with this image, I'm going to hit the fill frame proportionally, and it just kind of drops it in with that. And now this picture, the sky is really blown out to all white, so I'm going to give that stroke, give it like a little half a stroke. We'll give it a 0.5 there, and we're going to just make it black. The black and the registration are the same. Okay. The registration marks are what go on the outside as we were going to print this. It helps the printer figure this out and cut this and all of that kind of thing as you go. All right. So now we have that picture in a circle. Okay. So again, these are other options for you. You don't need to just kind of put this in. And likewise, we have the pen tool. Okay, so I can even do a shape. Okay, and then I can place an image within that. So I've got that selected. I'm gonna go Command D, and I'm going to pick a picture and open. And now it's in there, and I can do auto fit, and I'm gonna do that. So now it has filled that frame proportionally. So we're not limited to just squares or circles or any kind of geometric polygon. You can go completely crazy with something like the pen tool and draw in your own shape for a image box. And you could do the same thing with text. You can put text in a shape like this. Why? Because again, we're creative and we might want to do something, and we just go back over here to our reference. We might want to put text in something like this circle here, or some other kind of area. Okay, so don't think that you're restricted in that case. You can kind of do whatever you darn well want with something like the Polygon tool. Okay. I'm going to do a little rotation here on this. So again, I'm just selecting the corner as I've selected it, and you can see we've got be able to turn it, and it's kind of giving a little preview of the angle. Okay, and again, I'm going to place, and just want to show you what that does. Okay, so it put it in with this kind of base. Okay, so in this case, you need to turn the picture to get it the way you want. Does that make sense? So it's kind of putting that in. Now, we will be able to kind of change the position of the image in there, and we'll get into that a little later. But you're able to kind of turn that image around, and it kind of gives it a contact point. Okay, so in this case, it's based on the bottom, and you're able to kind of spin it around. Okay. Why? Because it's kind of cool sometimes to turn stuff. Okay. So again, we're not limited that it has to go straight up and down. We can turn things, we can adjust things as we go. Okay. Let me just do something here on the polygon. So when we click on the polygon, all we did was we selected the tool and then we clicked on our page. This is where you can set the number of sides. Okay, so I have it set for a star with 9 points. And you can select the number of sides of that polygon that you want. And the percent is how pointy the star is. So I'm going to put it like 25%. And then I'm just going to click OK. And I'm clicking again and do it. So what it's doing is putting in a star, in this case, a 7-point star. Over here, it's kind of hard to see without the stroke. In there. Okay, with a larger insert, meaning it's pointier. Get rid of the other one below. Okay, so that percent is how pointy it gets. Now, if we go over this quote star with the direct select tool, you'll notice it kind of shows you the points exactly like Illustrator would. And we can actually select a point and we can move it. Okay, so we are not, there's no predetermination as to what is there. We can simply start with a point and can kind of build it out ourselves if we want. So there is no kind of pre-done. It's set. You can start with it, but then you can come back in this case with the direct select tool, and click on those points and work it out. Okay. So know that the creativity here is not limited. And this is kind of why we do Photoshop and Illustrator first. So these kind of ideas and these tools kind of make a lot of sense to you. Um, if we just started with this in the beginning, it would kind of be a little weird, and it would be a little bit, I think, a little bit more confusing, because InDesign does a lot. Is again, it's designing with all of those other programs in place. Um, and again, it's a pretty flexible tool. So again, if I hit with the select arrow, it's got the whole object that I can move around. If I come back with the direct select arrow and click on it, I'm able to select individual anchor points and move those around as I see fit. Okay. Likewise, if you look under your pen tool, there's a add and delete and convert. So if I still want a circle in there, I can click on that, and again, it gives me a circle or a curve. The Bezier curves come into play. Okay, so we're able to kind of create a lot of kind of very, very unique shapes with that. Okay, so again, this is going back to the same kind of tools that we used in Illustrator on that. Line is just kind of a line tool. Literally, it's a line. Why? Because sometimes we want lines in our files just to kind of break things up. Okay, so it's very common when you're designing to have some kind of break line. And if we look back here on some of these templates, you can see these are kind of break lines. So it might mean you're going to underline a whole item, or you're going to kind of put some kind of a gap or break in the text from a visual standpoint to help us read. And you can see here on this image here, these are just lines. Okay, so they're just there from an aesthetic standpoint to kind of tie it together, but also to help us to visually understand things. Okay, so it helps us read a little bit better and helps us understand better. So, in this case, it's just a line and that's all you need. There's a tool for that, and that's called the line tool. Okay, and likewise, that line or that stroke can be changed, right? It doesn't need to be just a solid line. It can be one with, in this case, a thick line and a thin line. And these are all, again, options for you under there. Okay. So again, um, don't think it's just, that's it, I can do a line. Well, no, you can do more than a line. You can do some kind of very decorative line with the slashes in it, or dotted, or straight hash, and they're all in here. So look at those, and then I don't think you can add different lines. These are kind of the presets, but they're kind of cool, right? I mean, there's a pretty good selection there that you can use with that. Okay, so that makes sense. So it's, again, something we're going to put in just to kind of break things up. So let's say I want to put a line here between sections. I'm going to give myself some space. And I'm just going to come in here and click. And well, think here for a second. Just give myself a gap. And then I want to put a line in here. And again, if I hold the shift key, it gives me a straight line. Okay, and I'm going to give it some weight. And then I'm going to come back and I'm going to say I want it to be wavy. Okay, and maybe I want to give it a little color just to make it stand out. And we'll make it green. Okay, and then I can come back in here, and get rid of some of this gap to make it fit. And I can come back with my select tool and I can select my line, and I can move that up or down with my arrow tool or my mouse. Okay, so again, everything is kind of adaptable with this program. But again, probably the best thing to do is kind of look at things and kind of get a feel for what you want. I think it's hard because a lot of times we're dealing now with pictures and we're dealing with this text, and it oftentimes becomes very overwhelming. It's like, what do I do? How do I do it? Where do I put that box in order to put the text in or the picture in? And again, this is where looking at layout designs and researching is going to be key. Okay, so looking at these kind of ideas, seeing things that kind of work with you, potentially sketching them down, and it just kind of gives you a feel and direction. This is also one that kind of shows you what you can do with the text and how it kind of overlaps. Okay. So again, we're just kind of thinking about the motion of how the eye works. Okay. That's always kind of important. Again, typically in Western world, these US and Europe and such, we read left to right. So we'd start the upper left and then kind of move our way down to the bottom right. Okay, but you can see here, these kind of ideas and sketches can be drawn out on a piece of paper very, very quickly. And, I think it's just something that will help you to do this. And again, there are books on this. We're going to talk a little bit more about layout as we go and how to, transform them over into something that will work in a contemporary way today. And these ideas will work whether you're doing, in this case, we're going to be doing a magazine, but it also works for brochures. It also can be parlayed into poster designs, programs, any number of different ways. So layout becomes pretty crucial at this point, right? And this really is a layout program. Okay, so don't think of it kind of as a desktop publishing, which it does. Okay, publishes books and all that kind of stuff. It really is more of a layout program where we're bringing massive amounts of text together with images. Okay, in a very cohesive fashion. All right, questions so far? Anybody? You guys good?
Yep. Well, I am.
Okay. Making sense? Okay.
Yes. Sorry.
All right. No, that's fine. I just, sometimes I talk and I babble and I know what I'm doing.
Sorry,
I don't know if you guys get it. So.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Okay.
Yeah, no, it's very clear and concise. Yeah,
okay.
Sorry, my microphone was muted. I was all talking to myself.
Oh, you were. I do that too.
Like, wait a minute.
I do that too.
Yeah,
again, just let me know because I don't want to get too fast and then you go, what are we talking about? But again, the main principle is to pull this text and images together in a layout. And again, typically we're doing multiple pages. And again, we're going to be doing some magazine spreads and we'll work up a cover of a magazine as our final. But I think it's definitely something you're going to start to go, hey, I kind of like this in design. And as you do, you're going to start to use it for literally almost everything. Whenever you've got to pull things together. So whether it be your resume or term paper, it's really just a kind of a cool way of doing it. Now, we talked about the gap tool, all right? And again, how we can enlarge or reduce the spacing between columns of text or images, okay? We've talked about how we can use the shape tools not only just to kind of bring in pictures, but we can kind of modify those so they're not what they came out to be, right? So it's not just a polygon or an ellipse. We can actually add in or reshape those using the direct selection tool. And then we can also use the pen tool to do things. So you're going to go, well, why do we need a pen tool also? So let me start to get into some like kind of how we oftentimes find images and how they can kind of go together and how we want to deal with the runaround or the text wrap on something. So let me put in a big circle. I'm going to draw down here. Again, you can zoom in or zoom out as you need to when you're working. And I'm going to come down here. We're going to go to a new page. And I'm going to draw a big old circle. And I'm going to put a picture in it. So going back to Command D or place. Memorial Day, Lincoln Memorial. Today, Abraham Lincoln died. Way back in 67. 65. Hold on, let me double check here for you. think it was 65. So he was shot on this day, and let me pull up. I think it was 65. I hate to give you incorrect information. Anybody know? Anybody else top of their head know? Nobody. Looking. I don't want the car, I want the man. Don't want the movie. 65. So April 15, 1965, Lincoln was assassinated. He was shot the night before at Ford's Theater, Washington. I actually visited there last year, right before the COVID started. End of probably, I think it was it the 20th? I think it was February 29th last year. It was like leap year, and I got to go. Hold on. It's a really cool little museum. It's a theater. It's they still use it for productions, and when it's not in production, you can visit as a museum run by the Park Service. And then across the street is the house that he actually passed away in, some 7 hours or so later after he was shot. I want to pull up. It's I'm looking on my phone now. Give me a second, guys. 1 second. Almost there. Almost there. So let's put that up. So that's the theater. You guys see that? Yes. On my camera there. And then it's kind of crazy. This is actually the little Derringer, the little gun that John Wilkes built. It's tiny. You're like, oh my God, it's like amazing that you can literally see this thing that changed history. And then this is the theater itself in DC. It's a couple blocks from the National Mall and stuff. So I think definitely worth putting it on your list when you get to DC again. Hopefully you guys go to DC. It's kind of a great place to go. Lincoln Memorial here. See, I get diverted and go off. And that's not off track. Not going to be off track. So I'm putting this in. I just want to kind of put this over here, and I'm going to move my picture. I'm going to fill frame proportionally, so it actually blows it up a tiny little bit, and I'm okay with that. So I've got this kind of area where I could potentially put some stuff, but I've got this picture around it. Now I'm going to put in a text box, and I'm going to just kind of draw it, and I'm going to want text to kind of fill in this area. Okay, and let me go and grab some text in here. Talking about Mr. Lincoln. Oh, I didn't mean the Lincoln Project. I meant just Lincoln. It's going to grab from the old Wikipedia. It's going to look weird because of all these links and such, but I'm just going to grab a couple paragraphs here, come back, and I'm going to paste it in, zoom in so you can see what I'm doing. I got my cursor there, and then paste it, and I've got it. And you can see I've got this overlap between the text now and the image. Okay, so I want to fix that. I don't want that. So this is where that text wrap comes in. So I'm going back to my picture. And again, these are my options for the text wrap. So right now there is no wrap. This is wrap around the bounding box, which is this blue box. Okay. This one is wrap around the object shape. So it's going to wrap around the circle. So I'm going to click that. And boom. Okay. Okay. Well, what did I do? Text wrap, both sides, subject. Give me a break here. Come on. Why is it working? Both sides, left, right. Okay, so it was set on some other contour option. So I hit detect, detect edges, and you can see now the text. Oh, why did you go around? Come on, man. Come on. It went around the box. So now the text is literally curved around this area. And it actually works pretty well because it's not so tight. You don't want to have this thing wrapping where you only have like 2 words over here. That makes sense at this point. If I move this box over, this picture box, you'll see at some point it's kind of getting really tight and it just becomes hard to read and looks a little awkward. So in this case, going around something round, you want to kind of enlarge that a little bit. So I'm going to pull that back here, and that's kind of nice. Now, the one problem I do have right now is it's getting a little tight, right? It's very, very tight in here where my cursor is between the image and the text. So this is, here is the gap, okay? So I can enlarge that. Right now it's at 0.06, and I can enlarge that up 0.18. That looks a little bit better there. So we're able to make those changes here with that. And because it's a round shape, it's only giving me one option. Okay, had it been a square, okay, so up here, and let me just double check it, we're here, text wrap is, I like here. I can then move this around, I can enlarge it. Right now they're all linked, but if I want that gap to be bigger or smaller, I can adjust it that way. Okay, I think I did some stuff in here last class, that's why it's not jumping there. Let me just check it over here. There we go. Okay, so it's giving me right, left, up and down. So if I want to unlink it, if I don't want the gap, say, so much at the bottom or at the top, I can unlink this and then I can adjust one over the other, right? So I can kind of pull that in or out based upon what I want that to wrap around that image. So over here with the curved image, you can see what we did there. And that works out pretty nice. And I know I can see with my guys that my image is going to bleed off or go off the page, but it's all lined up. Now, I want to show you one thing that you're going to run into and you're going to be all confused as to why is that happening. Right now, there's a way of looking at your images in the computer so it speeds up or slows down. So I'm going up to View, and I'm going to go to Display Performance. And this is a way that InDesign can allow you to work and see things. So we went over normal preview last class, but here is how this is displaying the images or the quality of the images. If I do typical, you'll see, and again, this probably will be defaulted on your computers when you open it to typical. It looks pixelated, right? You can see all the points in there, right? You can see, look how jaggedy that looks. And you're gonna go, oh my God, my picture sucks. I did a really bad job in Photoshop. I didn't learn anything. What am I gonna do? Well, the picture is fine. You did a great job. You did a good thing. But if you go over here to View and Performance, you need to be on high quality. And what that's doing is bringing the picture sharp. Now, why is that even there? Well, right now we're dealing with a small document, meaning it's only a few pages long. But imagine a document that's you know, 200-300 pages full with 400 or 500 pictures, who knows? The computer is going to get really slow. So in order to speed up the processing, when you're dealing with something like InDesign, it allows you to view the image in different ways. So the display performance is either high quality or typical, or let's just say, you know, you're working just on the text layout and you're not worried about the pictures at all at this point. You can even go to a view display fast, which literally takes your pictures away. They're not away, they just kind of grade them out here, but they're there. So imagine if you're flipping through 300 pages and you're just trying to go through and just kind of look at where things are from a layout standpoint, you could just go to view display performance fast. Okay, the pictures are all there. They didn't go anywhere. They just kind of hid them so the computer can work faster and you can jump from pages to page quicker. Likewise, the typical display kind of pops up. Again, it helps you to work and you can see that, but if you want the pictures at a better quality as you're working, or you're wondering is the picture okay, go to display performance, high quality. Okay. And again, you can't see it when we're looking small here, but when we zoom in, we can definitely see it. So here it is under high quality. Here it is under typical. Again, you can see it got pixelated. So it's not your file. It's just how InDesign is working with that picture in order to speed up your life. So you're not stuck with it processing all the time. You know, really comes helpful if you got a slower computer or something like that. Or you're working again with these big documents with a lot of pictures in them. Okay, but I always recommend at the end or when you're getting close or you want to double check it off, just click the high and go. It used to only do high quality. You would have to click each picture. Now it just does it overall, but it does make a difference in how you see things. You can see right there, it just got pixelated. Okay, so it's not really pixelated. It's just the computer processing quicker with this typical display performance. Okay, so and if you find your computer's being slow or something like that, that might be one way you can kind of speed up what you're doing. Is just kind of click it to typical, do what you got to do, work your stuff, and then you can come back with the high quality just to verify things. Make sense? Questions on that? Okay. So again, as you're going to run into it, like I said, those that have already started using InDesign are going to go, oh my God, my pictures are blurry. They're not. Just double check the thing here. They might be, right? But odds are it's just checking the display quality. Okay. So typical or high is what we'll use. And then fast display kind of moves more. So if you come back and it's like, oh my God, what happened to my pictures? They're all there. You can see the links are there. You can click on your links over here and see that they're all linked still. Just again, come back to view and then go to typical or high and it puts them back into place. Okay. Questions on that? Does that make sense? Gaza? Yeah. We're almost done, man. We got so much done. All right.
I didn't know about that display thing. That makes a lot of sense. I was wondering why. I was like, I don't understand. This photo is like really large and great quality. How come it looks so bad?
It's because it's typical.
Know that.
Yeah, and I'm going to say, I think by default, when you first open it, it goes to typical. Does that make sense, guys? So
Yes.
yeah, if you're getting it, it's just because of that. So double check it. If it still looks pixelated after you went to high quality, it probably is a bad picture. You want to go back and check it out in Photoshop and see the quality. And again, like anything else, we can only make things so big. Does that make sense? You know, if the larger you make a picture, the odds are it's going to get pixelated, especially if it's larger than what you can start to utilize on your pages. Does that make sense? So double check it, but yeah, that happens all the time, and everybody gets confused with that quite easily. All right, so I want to spend 217. Spend a couple minutes just kind of going over some topography, because again, I think type is really kind of crucial with design, and InDesign really does start to get into that. So I want to bring in just kind of an example of some type, and I had this available to us on our website. Let me just, that's in downloads. Blow it up a little bit. So I just want to go through some parts of the type. Again, this is available on the website. Yeah, so down here on the website, in the same sketch, so you guys can just kind of grab it just for reference. And I did get the videos up from the last couple sessions just before class. I got those finally working. So, all right, so this is part of typefaces. And again, why do we have, well, everything has to have names, right? But what these are ways that we can kind of talk as artists and as designers together. Okay, so we can have this kind of common terminology. And I give this to you as reference. I'm not going to quiz you on it, but I think the more you kind of understand these things, it starts to help you when you start to select type. So you can start to see what you're looking for. And you can start to kind of, in your own mind, kind of selecting typefaces as you go. So, and I'm obviously the serif, right? That's the part that kind of hangs off, right? This is also a serif up here. And these are all little serifs. And then we have the sans serif, obviously, without that, right? So there we go. So if we have, you know, type in here. That's obviously not right. That's a serif typeface with the same sans serif. So let me just kind of, I'll just go to the old standby Helvetica. Helvetica black. And we're just going to make that big so you can see it. Okay. So the sans serif does not have the serifs. We're going to duplicate this down. We do have the serifs here. I'm going to put that on times. Here. So again, you can see the difference between the serif and the sans serif. Okay. Parts of things, the baseline, we talk about the baseline a lot. That's really what the letters sit on. Okay. So if we talk about moving a baseline up, that means kind of moving the whole thing up. Or if we have a letter that descends below, and we're going to give you a Y there. So we have a descender, okay, which is, where are we talking about the descender on this one? Tail, bowl, counter, bracketed, ascender, descender. So we're talking about it right here. So this is kind of dipping below, not really, but it is. That's the part dipping below. So below is descender, and if it goes up, it's above this X height, which is kind of the line of a typical letter, okay, or the X, that's where it kind of comes from. Again, all these terms kind of go back to when they were literally putting type in a machine, okay, to make this, right? Somebody literally, they call it typesetting because literally people took the type, the little type blocks, and put them in to make the words, the sentences, the paragraphs, the books. It got faster as technology grew, and now it's all done in a computer. We hit print, and it comes out, and they make film, so they can print this thing in mass quantities. Okay, so but the X height is the height of the X in that particular typeface. Okay, so that can change based upon the typeface. So if it goes above the X, okay, that's the ascender, and it goes below, that's a descender. Okay, they talk about the arc. Okay, the ear is basically a serif. Okay, but in this case, it's coming off of something like a G. That kind of makes sense. A terminal is the end of the typeface. Okay, the counter here is this area. The bowl is the part that goes underneath the tail. Again, I don't expect you to memorize all of these, but know that these are kind of how we talk about things. And if you hear me say that, or as you start to work, you know, these are kind of good things to talk about because it's just kind of a language. It's a common language that we talk about, just like we talk about different colors, or we talk about layout, or our type, or our things in Photoshop, pixels or resolution. It's just another way that we can kind of communicate between us. So we go, you know what, I really love, you know, this counter on the A. Well, what we're talking about is this area where it's kind of makes like a little leaf, and that's kind of very typical of Helvetica. Helvetica has this A with this kind of heart, leaf shape. So it's kind of like a kind of an identifier for that. Okay. So again, it's just kind of a way that we can talk and communicate between each other. I would just kind of say that there's a lot of these online, but this was kind of a nice one. It was kind of quick and to the point, to understand things. Okay, does that make sense with the type as we go? And I think it helps by looking at this to start to be able to kind of identify things as you're starting to go. So it's like, well, let me look at this and go, what do I like about this serif? You know, and it could be like, you know, maybe it's this arch, or maybe, you know, I'm not happy with this arch in this F. So maybe that's going to be something I'm going to look at as I start to go through my different typefaces to kind of start to figure that out. Okay, so as I start to get to other serif faces, I can determine whether I like that or not. That makes sense? And let me do this over here. So again, this is very typical of what we've been doing. This is the leading, the space between. Okay, the tracking, the height of it. This is where we can kind of stretch a little bit. I don't recommend doing this right or left too much, but you might need to. There might be kind of a reason for it. You can see it does that. It gets all wonky. So again, I'm not one that kind of recommends doing that too much. But there are cases and times where you want to do that. Likewise, you can give it a angle, right? So if it's not an italic typeface, you can make it one. Okay, so you can do that in here. We'll put that back to 0. Okay, but if you look here, many times they have an italic built in. Okay, so it's better to do the italic that's built in than to come down here and do it yourself. Because when it's like this built in, the designer of the typeface has kind of planned out the gap or the spacing between letters. Okay, so he's played with the tracking and the kerning between letters and words. Okay, he's kind of built that in. So you can manually override if you need to, or that's where to do it. This is for like an uppercase, so we'll do serif 2. So if I want serif to the second power, I can do that, and then I can kind of pull that out. Okay, so I'm just kind of enlarging it here. It's kind of pushing it up, something along those lines. And again, I can come back in and make this typeface a smaller typeface, so it kind of looks more realistic, and then I can kind of push it up again there. And in this case, I might want to increase the leading a little bit. So spreading that out. I'm sorry, the tracking. Okay, so it's very, very, I say it's powerful, right? I mean, it lets you do a lot. And by knowing these kind of names, it helps you to start to look at the points and start to figure out what do I like about that typeface or not. Okay. Well, serifs are square, but they're not necessarily always. It could be rounded. Okay, so you will find some rounded typefaces that are also serifs or sans serifs. Okay. So you have them with both, right? There'll be a block typeface. Let me go back here. Okay, so there of the typefaces, there's kind of decorative. That's kind of a decorative font, hand drawn or hand type. That's kind of, see, that's a sans serif, but it's very rounded, kind of bubbly. That's a sans serif, but it's kind of really thick, chunky kind of. We just did that. No, as grotesque, kind of tough. Okay, but it's a sans serif. And you can go through again millions of different typefaces here. And I'm looking to see where do we have. Okay. So under filters, okay, we're still under the typeface. You can kind of tell that you just want to look at your serifs or sans serifs, okay, or your slab serifs, which are kind of chunky serifs, okay, or the monotype, meaning they're kind of the same thick thing, black letter, handwritten, decorative, script. So if I do this, what it's doing, it should bring me up just those typefaces that kind of have been built into that area. Now again, this could be off a little bit because it's kind of how it was coded into the typeface by the designer. So here is an ornament, but these should be just your serifs, okay, that are popping up because that's what I filtered for. Okay, so if you know you're looking for a serif, just hit your filters. Okay, if you want to go back to a sans serif, it'll bring up just your sans serifs. You can kind of start to go through. Again, it may put some in. Again, it depends on how they've been classified by the designer. Okay, and again, if you see the number next to it, so like this champion, we saw that with 7. Let me go back to it here. 7, that means there's 7 weights underneath, okay? So again, that's kind of a nice typeface. It gives you these different weights. There's the lightweight, bantha weight. So you can kind of go through and see which one would work with you. So again, when they have various weights, kind of a nice thing. And it especially works well when you start to lay out that you can pick one weight for maybe your body copy, and you can use a thicker weight for something like headlines or titles or subheads type of thing. All right. So look at those. Again, I think it helps you to start to look at typeface a little better as you're going. So in this case, click on there, go up to your filters if you want to do. If you don't, just kind of clear those off. And again, these are other options that you can kind of go through with that. So again, they're just kind of built in there, regular contrast, low contrast. Again, it's just a way of working a little bit better, but I want you to kind of start to really pay attention to the typefaces you're using by looking at them, okay? And by looking to see what's available to you so you can make the right decisions as a designer, as an artist, okay? Because type is huge, and it plays a big part in what we do. And without it, we're kind of messed up, right? I mean, we need to have these to do this. Okay, so know that you're going to want to pick the right typeface and spend the time picking it. All right. So next class, we're going to go over these things called style sheets, basically on how to preset some things. So they kind of will speed up the work as you go. All right. So that's kind of cool. So if you haven't done that, you're gonna be like, wow, that's kind of cool. But I don't want to get the paragraph styles and character styles until you've had a little time to play here, and kind of gone over what we've gone over today with um, allowing type to be in place and how we can kind of make adjustments. All right, questions?
I bet the math equation.
I'm sorry, what was that?
I bet the math equation. Serve square.
Yes, I got it. I got. Other questions? Does it make sense, guys, what we went over today?
Yes, most definitely. I didn't know it was like half of the stuff that you just showed us, and it was really beneficial, especially that linking part right there where the words curve around the round photo.
Mm-hmm.
That is gonna come in handy.
Yeah. And one thing, I mean, while we're here, I'm just looking at it going, hey, I didn't do this, but we can do the paragraph styles. We kind of mentioned it a little bit last time, but you can make those adjustments here. Okay. So like in this case, we've got what we call a rag. It's just kind of the edge going in and out. And it's not too bad. And again, we'll be showing you, I'm going to show you some things to look for with this, but let's say I want to kind of square it off just to kind of again, it becomes a shape, right? When you start looking at it this way, I can go over to something like this, and now you can see what the difference that made with that. So we'll go to our preview down here. Right, so here it is kind of boxed off, and it really kind of makes a shape with that, where if we have it with the normal kind of flush left, we have this kind of rag. So it makes a big visual difference just by kind of how do we select our paragraph styles. In this case, it's justified, and it just kind of makes this kind of a nice shape. And as you zoom out, you can see that shape. You start to see how things kind of come together with that. So that's what's there, and this is the normal kind of rag. So that's a big difference for me, right? I mean, there's this, and then there's this. Now, to me, visually, it makes a whole lot of difference in how we see things and how things are kind of on the page. So there's a lot here, and we're just kind of touching on a little bit of it, but I think it's going to be important as you start to work to know that there's all these kind of little nuances that you're able to kind of work with and modify. All right, anything else?
Just want to say that looked pretty clean. The
Yeah.
text and the yeah, pretty good.
Anybody else came in late that I didn't get? I think we got everybody. Let me see, Aaron, you sent the file over. We can chat about that. Let me see if I got it first. It did, hold on. All right, question is I'm gonna look at this and I can chat with Aaron. 17 pages, oh, it's big. Okay.
There's a few pages.
Anything else, guys? So again, if you haven't, give me your posters in. I got a little bit few more. I'm still finishing. I don't want to promise because I hate promises and then breaking it, but I'm working on them. So they'll be coming. But if you haven't, get that to me. Work on InDesign. Just kind of open up some pictures, place them in, work with some text, bring that in. Again, the more you start to use this, the more it's going to kind of make sense to you as you go, and as we continue to advance with this. So that's kind of your homework. If you haven't finished your poster, to work on that. And let me just check and make sure I got everybody today. Okay, anybody else that I missed? Okay. I think I got everybody. All right, questions? Anything else? All
Not
right.
much else.
Um,
Want to check out the right PDF?
yeah, you hang on, Aaron, and I'll open it up and we'll go through that real quick.
All right.
Anything else, guys? All right, so I'm going to pause the record.